The first time I realized I no longer belonged in my own office, I was standing in the hallway, holding a mug of coffee that had already gone cold. The door was closed. That was the strange part. My door had never been closed. I stood there longer than I cared to admit, listening to the low hum of voices on the other side, the familiar cadence of a space that used to respond to my presence without question. Someone laughed softly. Papers shuffled. A chair scraped the floor in a way that told me whoever was inside had settled in comfortably, like they weren't planning to leave anytime soon. I remember thinking, maybe I've got the wrong room. But the plaque on the wall still had my name on it. Raised gold lettering, slightly crooked at the corner where the adhesive never quite held. I had paid for that sign myself. Before all of this, my life was predictable in the best possible way. I liked knowing what my mornings would look like. The sound of my coffee machine sputtering awake before I did, the early sunlight creeping across the kitchen counter, the quiet satisfaction of putting on a blazer that still smelled faintly of dry cleaner starch. Predictability felt earned. I was 58 years old and had built a small consulting firm from nothing more than a folding table, a borrowed laptop, and a stubborn belief that competence still mattered in this world. Over the years, that firm grew into a respectable operation, 6 employees, steady clients, and an office space downtown with windows that faced east. I chose that direction on purpose. I like starting my day with light. My daughter, Lila, came into the business later, not because I pushed her, and not because she begged. She drifted in after a few years of false starts, an unfinished graduate program, a job she quit without warning, a relationship that ended with more silence than closure. When she asked if there might be room for her at the firm, I said yes, without hesitation. She was my child. And more than that, she was smart, creative, restless in a way that sometimes produced brilliance. At first, she worked out of the shared space with the others. I made sure of that. Boundaries matter, especially when family is involved. I'd learned that lesson the hard way in my younger years, back when I thought love alone could smooth over professional lines. Lila was grateful, or at least she said she was. She brought in fresh ideas, stayed late some evenings, and spoke passionately in meetings. I watched her closely, not as a mother, but as a leader. And for a while, I felt proud, quietly, privately proud. We ate lunch together once a week at the same little cafe across the street. Tomato soup, grilled cheese, 2 spoons clinking against ceramic bowls. She talked about the future with a confidence that sometimes felt rehearsed, but I chalked that up to ambition finding its voice. "You built something real here," she told me once, wiping her mouth with a napkin. "I want to help take it further." I believed her. At home, my life was simple. My husband passed years ago, and the house had learned to live without him. Creaks in the hallway, a chair that remained untouched, silence that settled in gently rather than sharply. I had my routines, my books, my evening walks. I wasn't lonely. I was rooted, which is why the first small changes felt so disorienting. It began with meetings I wasn't CC'd on. Nothing dramatic. Just calendar invites forwarded after the fact, notes summarized instead of shared firsthand. When I asked about it, Lila smiled easily. "Oh, I didn't want to bother you with the early brainstorming," she said. "You've got so much on your plate already." I remember nodding, though something in her tone snagged at me. There was a lightness there I didn't recognize, a confidence that didn't quite match her words. Then came the rearranging. A new whiteboard appeared in the conference room, filled with handwriting that wasn't mine. My books, reference volumes I'd kept on the shelves for years, were moved into a box to make space. The assistant, Jenna, avoided my eyes when I asked who told her to do that. "Lila said it was okay," she murmured. "I thought you knew." I told myself I was being sensitive. Generational shifts, I reasoned. Fresh energy. This was what growth looked like. But still, there were moments. A pause when I entered a room. Conversations that stopped mid-sentence. A subtle shift in posture, people turning toward Lila instead of me when decisions were discussed. And then there was the lock. One morning, I arrived early, as I always did. The office was quiet, the air still holding onto the overnight chill. I reached for my door, turned the handle, and it didn't budge.
For a second, I laughed.
Out loud. The sound echoed down the hallway and made me feel foolish immediately after. I knocked lightly, then more firmly. No answer. It wasn't until I stepped back and noticed the small keypad installed beside the frame that my stomach tightened.
Sleek. New.
Purposeful. That was the moment, the very first, that the word pushed floated through my mind. Not shouted. Not declared. Just there, hovering quietly like a truth waiting to be named. I didn't confront anyone that day. I went to the shared workspace instead, sat at a borrowed desk, and answered emails as if nothing had changed. My coffee grew cold in my hands. The light from the east-facing windows felt harsher than usual. And all I could think was this: how does a daughter slowly take something without ever asking and convince everyone it was hers all along? I wish I could tell you I spoke up right away, that I laid down boundaries with clarity and grace. But the truth is I waited. And waiting has consequences.